Ted Lasso Season 2, Episode 6. We have just passed the halfway point of this show. I do believe it is 10 episodes this season. And what can you really say about this show that hasn't already been said? Like, I know there are some people who think that it's in the sophomore slump and there's no actual story. But there's been so much story and interesting character development for a show like this. You know, I talked about it last week when something that this show has done a great job presenting this season is showing the football players themselves going through like these arcs of just being like, can I continue to do this sport? Like they're having like this mental freak out in a sense about like, can I perform properly? What is the emotionally draining part about playing this sport? And we see that with like Danny and Jamie. And, you know, we see that too with Isaac in here too. And just like all these different characters having these moments of like self-worthiness to figure out, can we play this? And then we see that the character of Ted Lasso himself has pretty much throughout this entire season, the first 5 episodes, we've really seen him just putting other people forward. You know, he is kind of pushing himself back in a sense and trying to make himself feel better by helping the people around him and really putting his, you know, mental health behind or not as important as those around him, and he's not taking care of himself in that sense. And that comes to head in this episode. And I think there's a few factors we can see throughout this episode that really like lead to that revelation. You know, like when his son's teacher calls him because he missed his lunch and he can't go like run it to his son. Just seeing like the nerves of having like, we have to win this game coming to a close with him, and he starts to cramp up again. I love it. I want to talk about Ted Lasso's arc at the end of this because we do get arcs for a lot of other people here. And again, what this show does really well is like it subverts your expectations in a way you're not expecting, but you're also kind of expecting because it's a show like this. So we kind of have like 3 main conflicts in this episode. And we think each of these conflicts are going to lead to like a head-to-head collision between the parties that they are. The first one being this really interesting side story with Higgins and Coach Beard. Coach Beard is in a really bad relationship. Like this woman is basically like forcing herself into his life and controlling him. We see that like when they communicate, he's so uncertain about how to talk to this girl, but he can't say no because that's just who he is. He's kind of scared of her, and she's going to go meet with like some old friends from her school years, and he's really uncertain about how to do this. And Higgins throughout the episode is just trying to like, do I talk to him about this? The Diamond Dogs tell him no. You shouldn't talk to him about this because that's not what you do. But Higgins is that guy. He's like, my friend's in pain. I need to tell him like what's really going on here. And just like that conclusion of that story, I think you believe you're gonna get this moment where Beard is gonna yell at him and just be like, what are you talking about? But it just ends in like a silent acknowledgement, like, I know. I'm kind of screwed, but I don't know what else to do. And they hug it out. It's a really powerful moment because, you know, Beard hasn't done a lot this season, and maybe that's just like, you know, Brandon Hunt being like, yeah, let's let everyone else take center stage here. But it's nice to have that little moment with Beard. And Higgins did really great in that scene. I just love those two. They were just so fun together. And that was a great side story. I really enjoyed that. Another side story here, I think that was really interesting, was the stuff with Roy and Jamie. Of course, in the first season, these two were rivals. They were going at each other's throats from day one, pretty much, of when we saw them. Now that Roy is one of the coaches, he's kind of like taking control of things. They actually start winning games, and they kind of like call it the Roy Kent effect, where it's like, now that this guy's back, this team is more comfortable. This team is more willing to like play and have fun and like commit to the game, and they're winning. They're doing better. Again, it's kind of that thing of like Ted is bringing in all these people to make everything in the world better except himself, and I think that's a really interesting thing to see here. So we see that Roy is kind of like giving advice to all the players except Jamie, and this is kind of making Jamie go like, why aren't you helping me? We're paying you to help every person on the team. You should help them. Basically, when this conflict comes to a head, you see the reason that Roy isn't helping him is just because he's a prick, but then he's like, okay, you want to know what your problem is? Ted has messed you up. Ted has been telling you to pass the ball. You are a prick, but you're also good at this sport, so be the prick sometimes. Sometimes you have to be the asshole and play like an asshole, because that's how you win. That's how you score. Quit like passing the ball and giving the goal away to your teammate. Go in for the kill sometimes. And again, you think like these two are going to yell at each other because they've hated each other for so long. And I like that they don't get Keeley involved here for like the love triangle thing, because you could have so easily gone for the love triangle thing. but you didn't have to because those guys aren't going to do that. And Keeley just doesn't need to be a part of that. So, like, I think that's really amazing, actually, because a lesser show would have made their conflicts about Keeley and not about the two of them. And I think that's really cool that these guys can just, like, hate each other without having Keeley involved. That's really fun. So that storyline does wrap up where we see that Jamie does get a game-winning goal after he gets the signal to be a dick, which is flipping them off. And you see that they put it on, like, the newscast and everyone's talking about it. And it's the thing now, that's Jamie's sign to go be the prick player, and you can actually score some points. And they do win the game. And we'll come back to that because we got one more side story before we get to, like, the big climactic ending of this episode. The thing with Rebecca. Now, I've talked about Rebecca a lot because I think she's a fascinating character. I love her, actually. And one of the things I was worried about was, is she going to be just the person trying to find love the whole season? Kind of in this episode she is. So she is hooking up with this man. I forget his name, but he's just like a younger gentleman who's out for the fun. It's not like the emotional connection. It's just the physical connection. As she's hanging out with this guy, her mother comes to visit. And this is setting up another conflict where we're like, okay, are we going to see the, Rebecca finally telling her mother, like, get your shit together, quit saying you're going to leave my dad, either stay with him and get through all the hard times, or leave him? Are they going to have that conversation? And you think, like, she's got agency now, she's going to tell her mother, you leave him or you don't, quit playing these stupid games that get us nowhere. And we just see that she decides to go back to, her husband, and Rebecca's like, yep, okay. That makes sense for my mom. Like, there's not much else to that. And I think that's a really cool story for Rebecca there. And again, you see that this woman is, like, has an interesting view on love. And I've been very down sometimes with Rebecca just, like, constantly trying to find a boyfriend in this season. But I think this is where it works really well because she has, like, this strained relationship of her parents to view off of. And she's like, this is a really hard thing to see. She doesn't want that. So she's just going to hang out with her little guy friend there and have fun when she needs to have fun, which is an important thing for her character and her arc. I like seeing that. Again, Hannah Waddingham is the standout of the season for me. I mean, Brett Goldstein, of course, but she's just been crushing it. She has just nailed every scene and every, like, part of that story. And now, let's talk about one of the big reveals of this episode. That, of course, is who was Rebecca talking to on Banter? Now, I can't remember if I said this character's name, but I was hinting in the right direction. I do believe at some point I might have said Sam Aubigonier. Is that his name? I feel like I messed up the last name. But yes, Sam is revealed to be the person on the other end of Rebecca's banter chat, which is a very fascinating approach. Again, Ted was used as a red herring. We're all like, oh, she's talking to Ted. I knew it wasn't going to be Ted because it's too easy. I like it being Sam. Now, I'm not going to say that storyline's going to turn into a sexual one because I don't think it will. I think we could see a scene. Again, I don't know how the show's going to go, but I think like we could see a scene where Rebecca and Sam, they're going to meet up with like their supposed partner on Banter. They're going to end up at the same restaurant. They'll be like, oh, are you waiting for someone? Oh, you're waiting for someone. They're not going to say that it's each other, and they're going to have a nice meal thinking they were both stood up, and they're actually going to connect. And I think that's the route that would go. I don't think it's going to be sexual, mainly because we haven't positioned Sam to be like the sexual character in the football team. Jamie, obviously, Collins, obviously, Isaac to the most part, too. It's never been Sam. Sam has been like the sweetheart young man who's just been like having fun. He's just enjoying himself. And I like that we got the Banter logo now on the jerseys. That's kind of cool to see. We're getting rid of like that company that ruined the Nigerian waters. Very interesting. Kind of a fun thing to see there. So I'm curious to see where that storyline's going to go. Some people are thinking it's hinting at like a Sam Rebecca love thing. I don't think that's the case, mainly because that kid, they say he was like 19 last season. I don't think that's the case. Rebecca's better than that, and Sam, I think, respects Rebecca too much to want to go down that route, but I think it could lead to an interesting friendship and conversation that we could have between the two. So those storylines are really fun. They had a lot to this story, but there's a big thing at the end here when we do like our final football game where Ted starts to clam up again and he's having another panic attack. And it's been building, I think, throughout the season, especially when we bring in like Dr. Fieldstone where Ted's going to have to talk to her. Because you can't just like set that up and not have it happen. He is, since day one, has been like, I want to be the one to help my players, and now I'm not helping them in the way that Dr. Fieldstone is. And like, I have skepticism towards therapists in general because it didn't help me and my wife with our problems. You set that up in the first episode of the season, it's going to pay off eventually. So during the middle of like the final moments of a game, Ted just has a panic attack and leaves. And Rebecca tries to go find him, but she can't find him in the locker rooms. And this is a really interesting thing too, that they actually win the game because Nate calls a play, and the play that Nate calls actually ends up working. They score the game-winning goal, and they win the match. And Nate gets on like the news things. Everyone's seeing like this is the Wonder Kid, and it's kind of impressive. So that's a good interesting thing with Nate there. We were kind of setting up like he's going to have some tension between him and Roy, but this time he's just like, no, I'm calling the shots here. This is what we're doing. And then we see at the end of the episode when Dr. Fieldstone's heading out to get a drink with the football team, she goes back to her offices, and there is Ted, literally a broken man asking that he'd like to make an appointment. Now, that's a really good ending because that is just a really good place to leave Ted. Like, we have seen him just kind of push all of these emotions aside throughout this season. We really have. Like, he hasn't had any like big moments. And at the start of this episode too, he's walking in, he's all chimey, he's having a good time talking to everybody. So you know the pin's about to drop and shit's gonna hit the fan of Ted eventually, and this is where it happens. And I think this is a really strong ending, and I'm super excited to see what happens in the next episode because it's very heartbreaking to see Ted like this. We don't want to see this guy so down on himself, but that's just where he is, and I think this is a fascinating place to put him in the story. I'm very curious to see how that's gonna go. Jason Sudeikis is really good at looking scared. Like, he just looks... this role was just made for him. Of course it was because he did like the skits earlier on, but he just knew what he was doing when he did this show. Like, I think he just right away signed on because he's like, yeah, I get it. Ted Lasso. I understand this character. I can build this character. I know what I'm doing here, and it works really well. So this was a great episode. I don't know if it's my favorite of the bunch so far, but it was written by Brett Goldstein, so Roy Kent himself did write this episode, which is kind of cool to see. Getting out there and doing some awesome stuff. I hope we see Brett write more, actually. I think he could definitely write something interesting. Like, the guy's been hosting a podcast for a very long time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe goes down and talks to some more celebrities and he gets some more opportunities to do certain things. We'll wait and see. Very exciting stuff. So that is my review of this episode of Ted Lasso. Now, thank you guys for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.